I'm going to encourage you to do something that you're going to think is extreme and you're going to think is unnecessary.
Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to North and South. Today on the channel, I wanted to chat a little bit about something many of you have asked me about. I've had a channel for almost 10 years now, so you've been able to see me. If you actually go back to the first 5 years of my channel, you'll see that I carried a lot of extra weight during that time. And 5 years ago, made some choices that helped me to lose nearly 50 pounds. And I thought at that time that that was just about confidence and about being trim and feeling like the outside of my body reflected who I felt I was on the inside. But since that time, I've learned so much more about how that has changed my life. But recently, if you didn't know, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and having to learn more about that and confront my health in ways that I never had to before, have come to realize that those choices I made 5 years ago to change my diet, change my activity, and change my weight really may have saved my life. So today I wanted to share the whole journey with you, everything from the choices I made then, the choices I've made since, how my mind has changed, how my body has changed, how my experience moving through the world has changed, and hopefully encourage some of you who were in the same place as me that you can do so too. So the first thing I wanted to start with was that I know that all of us are in a different place with our body types. Some of us are absolutely built to be trimmer, leaner, more muscular. Some of us are built to be a little bit softer. Some of us are, and the world would be much less interesting if we were all built exactly the same. So I acknowledge that. And in fact, so much so that I am one of those people that gains weight very easily. It takes me a long time to gain muscle. I don't know. It's not like either or, I know there's those like 3 body types that go around. I don't think it's quite as simple as you have one of these 3 body types, endomorph, ectomorph, and I don't remember the other one. But I do know that I am someone who holds a little bit more fat and who gains weight very easily. I've seen that in my 46 years. And so that started probably when I was in middle school. I started to notice my body changing. My friends started to notice my body changing, and we were very open with each other. And so they were pointing out like, wow, you're a lot different in these ways than you used to be. And I went through middle school and high school that way. I didn't ever get to be really, really heavy, but I was never super happy. I didn't feel like my outside was reflecting my inside. That really changed, or I guess it really gained a lot of momentum once I started having babies. That's when, after I started having children, is when I first started dieting. I didn't really do a lot of that in high school. I think one of the happy parts of living, in the 80s and 90s and before is that there wasn't such a huge diet culture as there is now. And so it wasn't until I had my babies that I started trying out different diets to lose weight. And so I feel like I've done so many. I've done Slim Fast. I did the South Beach diet. I was a vegetarian. I did HCG, Weight Watchers many times. I was a vegan. I was even a raw fruitarian for a time. I actually gained weight in that. I gained 10 pounds that month that I tried to be a raw fruitarian, which means all you're eating is nuts and fruit. So I just thought, how could you possibly, gain weight if you're eating nuts and fruit? But I did. I tried very hard to be a good vegan with drinking, these smoothies with acai berries and the cacao nibs and things you're adding so that I could be getting all of these nutrients. And then ultimately 5 years ago, as I shared on this channel, I did the Optavia diet. I was very reluctant to do the Optavia diet. I had done all of those diets and I would lose a little bit of weight and then gain it back. Usually I would only lose between 5 and 10 pounds, but it was enough to make me feel like the diet was working, and then it would stop working. And that was very, very demoralizing. And so by the time I started this channel, I was much, much heavier than I had ever been. And it was actually really hard to have a YouTube channel because I had to confront that, because literally the camera would be on me from many, many different angles. And then I would have to sit in front of my computer screen to edit those videos and get to see myself from many, many, many different angles. Now, I did decide just to accept it and to show myself from those angles. I would only delete it if it was just egregious and unnecessary. But it was really hard. And I think probably a lot of you can identify with where I was at in that time. I was kind of like, I didn't want to confront it because I thought I'm about to solve it. I'm about to solve this, so I don't have to really think about it because like, and I was trying not to weigh myself. You're going to buy clothes and you're buying larger than you ever have, but you're like, I'm not going to think about it. But the number one goal when buying clothes and when getting dressed each day was what can hide my body? What can hide the extra weight that I'm carrying? And so I was wearing a lot of layers, a lot of drapey things, and it was a lot. And I guess I feel sad for that person because all of those years where I was gaining weight, I really truly was trying to be healthy. I was truly trying to be trim. I was exercising. At one point I ran a half marathon. Another time I did a Ragnar relay race. So I was running. Wasn't able to lose more than 5 to 10 pounds though. And like I said, I ended up eventually needing to lose about 50 pounds. But I feel bad because I was constantly on a diet. I was constantly trying to limit and do things to help me lose weight, but they were never effective. And I guess I feel sad because I had no idea. There was so much information. I've since learned that there must be they must recommend to everybody that if you want to make money, an easy way to do it is to write a diet book. So I read Dr. Phil's diet book. I read Oprah's. I read Deepak Chopra's diet book. And just was trying to like fix myself. What are you hungry for? You're only eating because you feel empty. And I read another one. What was it called? Why Are We Fat or something? And I was searching for answers, and I feel so bad that like it was a constant thing, but it was never effective. And so I think a lot of you might feel this way. You eventually start to feel like you're the problem, that you are either, you're kind of going back and forth between, I just want to accept it and move on because I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to be so obsessed with this, but also really sad when you see a photograph, when you have to confront it, maybe because you're gonna have to put on a swimsuit or go to a special event, or you see somebody from the past or anything along those lines, and you just feel like, what is my problem? And so then the stress of that causes you to eat more, and you don't even really know what you're doing. You can't figure out why other people can stay trim and you can't. So that was a really hard time for me, and I finally was willing to try another diet because I'd kind of given up on diets. I had felt like, especially ones that required major changes, because I thought, well, that's not going to be helpful because I just need to learn how to eat in moderation and live in the real world. But I did some research and found out that Optavia actually had pretty good numbers. And so I was desperate. I was really desperate. This was 2018, so actually 6 years ago. And so I did Optavia. And if you go back and watch that video, you'll see that like the weight melted off. It was amazing. It came off so quickly. And having weight come off that quickly is actually a pretty interesting experience because it's kind of like when you've been walking with a backpack on or hiking and you take it off and you feel so light. Literally, you feel like that in your body. And so I was so energized because the weight was just falling off. And also because I was no longer relying on, these sugar highs to get me through to the next thing for my energy. And so I was burning my own fat, and that is actually a pretty great state to be in, to feel good. I was very happy. And I will say, Optavia taught me actually quite a bit. And it kind of snapped me out of my carbohydrate and sugar addiction. So I'm very grateful for it. Very, very grateful that I was able to get out of that. But what I did find after Optavia, and you could, if you are a very observant follower of my channel, you'll be able to see that like my weight would creep up, and then I'd have to go and buy all these prepared snacks from Optavia again. But the problem was, there's a couple of things there. First of all, I was so deep, and I had so much conflicting information about diets. So much, like, no, you should have, mostly fruits and vegetables and whole grains. You should be eating whole grain rice and wheat and all of these things. No, you should be having, all of these things, and fat is bad, fat is not bad. And so like, day 3 to 7 of a diet, when it starts to get hard, all of those things would be going in my brain, and I would quit because I wouldn't know like if I was even choosing the right diet. Optavia was amazing, and I'm not going to say you shouldn't do it, but it was amazing because I didn't have to think about it anymore. I just did it. And I didn't even worry that it was factory food. It is like as highly processed as it gets for most of the day, and then you make 1 or 2 meals depending on what the plan you're doing. But it was amazing because I just surrendered to the diet and it worked for me. But where it wasn't amazing is, for one, it's highly processed food. It is factory made food. And so that's not necessarily great for you. And 2, it wasn't great because of that. It has a lot of these additives and these sugar alcohols and things like that. And I actually started to develop allergies to those things. I am now very, very sensitive to sugar alcohols. So the sugar alcohol that's in everything, I can't remember what it's called. Whenever it says stevia or monk fruit, it's actually xylitol. Is it xylitol? And I can't have that. So I don't remember if it's xylitol. I'll put it on the screen. It got to the point where I was like throwing up every time I would have these sugar alcohols. I'd become so sensitive to them, and it caused a lot of bowel distress. So it got to the point where I couldn't really use Optavia to lose weight. And I also didn't like that every time I needed to lose weight, my only solution was to start eating these little packaged foods again. And so the weight started to creep back up again. And so let me just say one more thing I learned from Optavia that I'm really grateful for is I learned some principles of how my body uses its calories and its energy. I learned, first of all, that as a woman of my height and my activity level, I didn't need nearly the amount of calories that I thought I needed. And there's no magic here. It really is calories in and calories out. And I'm going to explain that a little further. There's no persecution in this. There's nothing else. It just is. And so if I'm storing extra fat, then it is my body very simply telling me, thank you, but I don't need all of those calories, so I will store the ones I don't need. So if I'm overweight, my body is just very simply, it is as simple as can be, telling me you're giving me more calories than I need. Now I know there's a little bit of nuance with stress hormones in there and your actual hormones in there, your estrogen production. I know there's some nuance there, but it's not as powerful as you think it is. And I think it's very self-destructive if you think it is, because then you feel powerless. And if you're powerless, you can't change your situation. This is me speaking as someone who's had crazy hormones her whole life. I could go into all sorts of things because of those crazy hormones. But so Optavia taught me that I didn't need as many calories as I thought, and that not all calories are created equal. Not because, like, you could literally eat 1,500 calories of donuts a day, which is just like maybe 5 donuts, depending on the donut. And you could eat 1,500 calories of chicken and vegetables, which would give you a lot more food, but both of which, if you were in a caloric deficit, you would lose weight. But there is a difference in how you would feel. And so if you're eating just the donuts and things along those lines, you're not going to have great energy. You're actually going to be a lot more hungry. You're going to have these insulin spikes versus when you're eating high protein and vegetables. So I did learn those things. But like I said, it started to creep back up. You can see that on the channel. And it got to the point where, I hate to admit it, but I think in 2023, I had gained almost half of it back. I think I'd gained between 20 and 25 pounds back. You know, it's hard to say because you start to avoid the problem. You think, oh, it's not, I'm just here for a moment and I'm going to go right back down. And you kind of would, but, and you don't really want to weigh yourself at those times. But I realized I just needed to find something that would enable me to, no matter what situation I was in, I knew how to interact with food. And it would be something that could just last forever. So at that point, I made a dream board and I put a picture of me trim on it. And I looked at that every day to remind myself that it was possible. You think all sorts of crazy thoughts when you're overweight, and especially when you're going on a diet, because your brain actually really likes the sugar and things that you're giving to it. And so it will sabotage you and try to convince you not to lose weight. And so you think crazy thoughts about all sorts of things. And often you think, I just don't know if it's possible for me. I think I'm just someone who cannot be trim. And so I had that photo on there and that helped me. I was grateful to have it to remember, no, it is possible. And it was at that time that I was so kind of demoralized because I thought I had solved the problem that I was even praying about it and asking the Lord for direction so that I could figure this out. And that is when I was introduced to bright line eating. Now listen, I know you're like, oh my gosh, another diet. No, Bright Line Eating is actually a book. I think I have it up here. I do. It is a book, and I bought the Audible version of it first, and then I bought the paper version because there was some charts in here and things that you kind of want to read over and over again. And it changed my life. I will put a link to it on Amazon because Susan Peirce Thompson, I promise if you feel like you are addicted to food and sugar and have a hard time losing weight, you don't have it as bad as Susan did. She is a neuroscientist, doctor, and but also, what is it, like the guy who not only sells like the wigs, but he uses them, or the hair growth product, I don't know.
I'm not only the heckler president, I'm also a client.
She has gone through it, and that is what led her to want to study the brain and addiction. And so she walks you through why you're doing it and where willpower comes in, what food is doing to your brain and your brain chemistry, and why you have been failing. So this book, you guys, is amazing. And it does teach you how to eat, but it's a lot more general so that like you can interact with food no matter where you're at, what you're doing, and you kind of know how to take care of yourself. So I found this 2.5 years ago and started reading this, which led me to something I kind of realized with the Optavia, and something I'm going to encourage those of you who are struggling like me today. I'm going to encourage you to do something that you're going to think is extreme and you're going to think is unnecessary, but I'm going to encourage you to give up sugar, like completely, for the rest of your life, completely. I'm here to tell you, you think it's crazy. You think it's radical, but what's actually crazy and radical is the way we are eating now in modern times. For the entire span of human history, nobody ate like we're eating now. We are living in a radical experiment on humans. Highly processed foods and the amount of sugar that we are taking in is radical, it's unnatural, and we can't handle it. We can't handle it. It's wreaking havoc on your brain, but in your body on a cellular level, and it is defeating you so that you feel completely demoralized and can't figure out why you aren't making the choices you need to and why you're not losing weight. I will also tell you, you cannot work off the weight. You can lose a little bit of weight by working out, but probably some of you are nodding your heads right now. You've been running and lifting weights and you lost a little bit of weight, but then it stopped. And that's because the amount of calories you have to burn if you're in caloric excess is so intense that you're not going to do it. You have to eat less, and you really should give up sugar. The reason I'm telling you that I know it sounds radical, I mean, it like actually absolutely terrified me to do so, and I felt like it was asking too much, is because your brain doesn't want you to give up sugar. It's highly addictive, and it actually feels pretty bad to give it up for a few days. Here's the wild thing, and I realized it first time with Optavia, and I live it now every day. The amount of willpower it takes to have a little bit of sugar versus no sugar is insane. I can sit and watch my whole family consume a delicious treat, and I feel nothing. I feel nothing. It's not tempting. I'm not sad. I feel nothing. I can even taste it because I'm the one making it, so I'll taste it and make sure I got everything right. Still feel nothing. I'm not ruled by that anymore. The amount of willpower it took beforehand in my life when I was overweight and wanting to be trim, the amount of willpower it took was too intense. It always won because I was addicted and because I was constantly sabotaging myself because of that addiction. Not all humans have addictive brains, and Susan Peirce Thompson talks about that, but some of us do. It's actually like 1/3 to 2/3 of the population, depending on how addictive your brain is. And for those of us, the way we eat in modern times is we can't handle it. We cannot handle it. It is too much for us. I think I heard that in the 1800s, our ancestors were getting the equivalent to like a tablespoon of like refined sugar a day, and now we're getting something like, I don't remember. I'll put the numbers on the screen. We are not built for this. This is radical. Now, what I will say is it doesn't feel radical because we are just drowning in it. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but when the cigarette companies were finally getting tons of pressure, all of the science was adding up to that cigarettes were killing us, science that they had been trying to keep down and out of the public eye. Literally, the men and women who were leading those companies literally left those companies and they went straight to the food companies. They went to Kraft and they went to other companies because they knew they could use the same principles that they had used in the addiction to cigarettes in food. And that was in the late 70s and early 80s. And we have all seen the food industry change since that time. And now we're in like insane levels of food addiction. I mean, you guys, it is not an accident that everything has, like dill pickle flavor, or what is that, Flamin' Hot. I mean, there's like Flamin' Hot everything now. And the reason is because it was developed in a factory and it makes your addictive brain go nuts. And they know they have designed it. It wasn't like, oh, that's kind of funny. We just designed it to taste good and it happens to be slightly addictive. They were pushing in those places where they had their food scientists and researchers to create something that lit your brain up, that would make you keep eating and eating and eating and eating. And it's in everything. No food industry is untouched by it. No brand, it feels like, is untouched by it. And you feel terrible that you can't stay ahead of it. But the secret is they know that you are powerless to it. They designed it to be that way. And so the only way out is to walk away, to give it up. But I promise you, when you're in it, you think, that's too much. I will be miserable all the time. I will be unhappy all of the time. Because right now, without those things, you're unhappy. But when you walk away, and I feel emotion about this, when you walk away, suddenly, it sloughs off of you and you feel quiet inside. It doesn't even take willpower anymore to not have them. Once you get those addictive substances out of your body, once your brain heals, it literally takes a little bit for your brain to heal because it's just used to these chemicals that are just lighting it up and lighting it up and lighting it up. Once your brain heals, it's so quiet and it is so easy to make those decisions. It is so frustrating the way they're doing this to us. And once you're out of the system, you realize that. When I go to the grocery store, I feel insane because I don't eat sugar. So that means honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar, all of those things that they say are better. They're lying. Guys, it's just sugar. It does the same things in your brain. I don't eat any of those things. I don't drink juice. When you go to the grocery store, also, I don't eat grain. I don't eat flours. Mostly the biggest thing I avoid is wheat flour. I have other things that it causes in my body and sensitivities, but also it responds because it's been ground down and those nutrients are so available to you chemically. It acts a lot like sugar in the brain. What would happen in the past when I would try to give up the junk food is I would then lean more into I'm having orange juice or I'm eating 15 mandarin oranges, not knowing that I just transferred my sugar addiction to something else. Or I'm going to eat a lot of bread, right? Or a lot of things along those lines. But now when I go to the grocery store, I realize giving up just those two things. There's a few other things that I don't eat. I don't do the fake breads because I just know that it's still acting a lot when you grind. She explains it in the book. But when you grind down grains and the way it becomes available to your blood, and it acts a lot like sugar. But what you'll find is almost nothing in the store is available to you in the center parts of the store. Now, that seems crazy, but everything that's unhealthy pretty much has those two things, right? It has sugar and it has flours. And so at first I felt kind of crazy, but what I realized was, no. If I'm a radical in the way that I eat, I'll take it because we are really struggling as a country here in the United States, and many other countries are facing this as well, with our health. And so yes, I am radical, but I will also get the benefit of being radical in other ways. I won't be succumbing to the obesity numbers that we have in this country. I won't be having all of the health problems associated with that. I won't be constantly battling against all these new products. And it's crazy how many things they're trying to push on us. And now they've moved into the obviously energy drink market because guys, there's new energy drinks all the time. They are just trying to keep us so addicted to so many substances. That's how I got out of it. I highly recommend this book. She has YouTube videos to help you kind of, as you're healing your brain chemically, to kind of realign your thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about what the claim I made at the beginning of this video about how making that choice 5 years ago and then making it even stronger when I brought Brightline into my life 2.5 years ago literally changed my life and may have saved my life. That is not hyperbole. That is not like, yeah, because in a way, obesity, blah, blah, blah. As some of you know, and I think I might have already mentioned, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the end of July. So we are 2.5 months out, I think. And I don't eat sugar and I don't eat all of these things. And so I was feeling pretty bulletproof. I was feeling very happy that I wouldn't have things like that. And then when I got the cancer, and also I use a lot of natural products. So like I cut a lot of things out of my life. I use essential oils for a lot of my health needs. So I was feeling pretty bulletproof. And then I got cancer and I was like, that's a bummer. I thought that making these choices had made it so that I wouldn't get cancer and things along these lines. And I really struggled with that, and I kept it internally for the first little while. But then eventually I mentioned it to Mike, and I was like, it's a little bit of a bummer because I really believed that if I made better choices in my life, things like this wouldn't happen. And Mike said, well, maybe because you made these choices, like your outcomes will be better and maybe it won't be, as intense a cancer and stuff like that. And maybe, who knows, it would have been even worse if you hadn't made those choices. And I thought that was kind of like a nice thing for him to say to kind of help me cope with that fact. But he said that for weeks before I finally wondered, is there something to that? I had surgery a couple of weeks ago. Today's my first day not having to wear a tight corset. Very happy. Today's my first time that I drove. Feeling great. But because of the surgery, we finally found out, 2 months in, that I have stage 1A, which is very, very early breast cancer. And that is what you want to hear if you've been told you have breast cancer. I'm very, very happy about that. It was very small. It hadn't spread. It hadn't gone to my lymph nodes. That is hallelujah. So grateful for that. And so Mike said once again that he thought it was because of those choices that I had made. And so I finally said, I'm going to ask ChatGPT if there's anything to that. I really didn't think there was. I thought he was just being a nice husband, and he is a nice husband. But I asked ChatGPT, I said, my husband thinks, and I kind of told Chat all of the situation, and Chat said, actually, he's right. And there was all this research that started to spit out to me how being trim, but also being active and having muscle, and I'll talk a little bit about the choices I made beforehand for that, and like not eating sugar, things along those lines, actually increases your likelihood of having a lower grade, less aggressive cancer, which blew my mind. So I just figured you got what you got, and that's it. Now, I want to say there's a caveat here. Man, sometimes, who knows? The healthiest of all of us gets random things and rare conditions and they die. And I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to tell you that the research that's been done is actually we do have a lot of power in affecting our outcomes. The one that blew my mind the most is that having those markers of you're not overweight, you are not eating a diet of highly processed foods and a lot of sugar, and you are exercising and have some muscle, that you will get much less aggressive cancers when you do get cancer. Everybody can get cancer, but when you do, you get less aggressive cancers. And that literally is the difference between life and death. Because my cancer not only is 1A because it was small, but because it's very non-aggressive and very slow growing. And Mike kept saying, but maybe it's slow growing because you're not giving it the things that cancer usually eats, like sugar and highly processed foods and all of those chemicals. Absolutely, in my case as well, my cancer fed off of hormones like estrogen, and my ovaries make estrogen, and like I said, I've always had hormone problems, but so do your fat cells. Turns out your fat cells produce a little bit of estrogen too. So the more fat cells you have, the more estrogen dominant you are in your body. And that can also feed breast cancer cells. Let me just say, when I read that, I literally texted my whole family, and I texted another friend who's lost almost 30 pounds using Bright Line eating in the last few months. Oh my goodness. We all need to hear this. We all need to hear that it doesn't just change the way you feel every day. Though it does. I don't get dressed now to say, what can hide me? I don't feel constantly like in a photo that I'm going to be frustrated or sad, or I don't feel like when I look in the mirror, it doesn't reflect who I think that I am. But now also it turns out that it's literally made the difference in the grade and aggressiveness of my cancer. And like, we all need to hear that. Like, oh my goodness, if nothing else, it was worth it for that. I'm 46 years old. I want to be around for a while. I have a bunch of kids. Like, it was worth it for that. So it literally may have saved my life. So let me talk a little bit more now about some of the other benefits, because it may have saved my life with my cancer, but like, it gave me my life back. Before I lost the weight, my knees hurt all of the time. And I thought it was because of the running, but it was actually because running with the extra weight was so hard on my knees. And once I lost the weight, and my knee pain has gone away, and so that was the first thing that went away. It was the knee pain, and I was grateful for that. But I still had all of this other body pain, and I thought, well, some of us just are a little stiffer, a little tighter, because, you know, I walk every day. I do walk. Walking has been great for me. I don't run anymore. Once I kind of learned that you can't exercise the weight off, I'm like, I dread running. I hate it. I end up like doing everything I can to fight with myself so I don't have to go for a run, but I don't feel that way about walking. So I walk. I walk briskly, but not as briskly as my sister, it turns out. She just told me the other day she walks like a 13-something minute mile. That's so fast. And I try now to walk 5 miles a day. That takes me about an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 minutes, which, because of the age of my kids and the stage of life that I'm in, I can do, and I love it. It's my time to listen to scripture. It's my time to listen to uplifting music, to pray. I need it every day, and it makes me feel so, so good. But I was still having a lot of body pain. Definitely less, because I feel like literally moving my body in the walk was stretching out my back and stretching out my hips. But like, I really feel like this is a miracle. Last year, like a year ago, almost, my sister said, hey, she came for Thanksgiving, and she said, I have been doing this thing, and it has just been amazing, and like my muscle body composition has changed. And I had been thinking, I know I need to do strength exercises, but it's so overwhelming when you look it up. Like, you look at these like things you're supposed to do, you're like, I don't have those weights, and I don't have these things, and it's like, it's got to be simpler than that. And I'm so grateful that my sister, who is much more clear-minded than me, just came up with a thing that she does every day and then told me about it. So she like figured it out for me, and she said, and my sister's always been much more fit than me, by the way. She's like track star. She said, I do 100 squats, 100 jumping jacks, 100 sit-ups, and 50 modified or girl push-ups a day. And she said, at first I like spread it out throughout the day, so I would just do like 10 really quick and 10 really quick, that sort of thing, until like she was able to do it all at once. And it was terrifying when I heard that. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how many of those things that I can do, but I definitely can't do that many. But she challenged me to do it and said it would make a big difference. And I knew I'd been looking for something that could keep me young, right? That keep me healthy for the decades to come. And so I started doing it, and it was so hard. It was so hard. And I, was just like I'd been doing it for like 1 or 2 weeks, and Mike hadn't been around, but he was here at some point and saw me doing it. And he like turned around, he was working at the desk, because I was breathing so heavy and like making all these noises, like, and it was embarrassing to me, but he's like, are you okay? I'm like, it's really, really, really hard. And, but it started to get easier, and it started to get easier until like, I actually started feeling really good when I was doing it. Like this deep craving was being met in doing it. And then I started wondering, if I can do 50 modified or girl push-ups, can I do a real push-up? And I found that I could do. I think I did something like 10, which blew my mind. I couldn't even do one push-up like my entire marriage, my entire adult life. I couldn't even do one push-up. It was one of my kids' favorite things to do, was to tell me to like do a push-up so they could, and I'm like, I can't. They're like, do it. So they could just watch me like go, ugh, and fall to the floor and not be able to push up. Like, I can't. There's nothing there. I can't do it. Now, or just before I had my surgery 2 weeks ago, I was doing the 100 of each of those, and now I've moved to doing 40 real push-ups a day, and I feel like they're pretty solid push-ups. And I'm saying that because it was only a 6-month difference between doing 0, like incapable of doing a push-up, and being able to do 40. So wild. Here's the thing. What I found is the rest of my body pain, gone. because it actually turned out that my body needed muscle to hold itself in place. And I started to notice pains were like melting away. I wasn't struggling with them anymore in my back and in my hips and my neck. And like, I have all of these old injuries and I have like scar tissue, but like those 4 things really help strengthen my core. Like the arm push-ups, I thought it would be mostly, push-ups I thought would mostly be about my arms, but I actually find that it's strengthened my back and my core like in insane ways. So I feel so much better, okay? And then when I was looking at the surgery and how you can make recovery better, it was like recommending things you could do beforehand. And I was like miles ahead of what they said that we should be able to do. Like stuff like get out of bed without using your arms for assistance. Well, when you do 100 sit-ups a day, that's actually really easy to do, it turns out. So I'm just like so prepared and I felt so happy. And then when I read that stuff from Chad about, the less aggressive tumors, I realized that not only had changing my diet, but also doing this thing that my sister had encouraged me to do and had come up with had actually like unlinked me from those aggressive cancers in so many ways and have literally, once again, maybe saved my life. So let me just say something. If you're not struggling with any of these things, I'm happy for you. But if you are, I want you to know that it's by design. They want you to be struggling with these things, okay? Because they can't help it, right? They just make more money when we keep buying their products. And the only reason we're going to keep buying their products is because we're going to be eating them. And the more quickly we finish that box of treats, the more quickly we will buy the next box of treats. And so they can't help it. It is by design. The next thing is, it is hard at first. Now, Susan Pierce Thompson in her book will walk you through how to get through that time because it's brain chemistry. It is like 100% brain chemistry. And so because it is so scientific, you can scientifically approach it and help yourself get through it. But it is hard. But I'm here to tell you that I have found it's much harder to carry the extra weight. It's much harder to have the pain in your body. It's much harder to every day confront what you're wearing and how you don't feel comfortable in it and moving through the world with all that extra weight. Much harder. The toll that takes is much harder than not having the treats. I promise you. I promise you. And once you get over and your brain heals, it's not hard at all. And so I guess I'm here today to tell you to choose your hard. I would rather choose the hard that has helped me feel comfortable in my own skin, that has made my body pain go away, and that also has made it very likely that my breast cancer is much, much more mild than choose to eat chips and salsa before bed, than choose to eat candy the month of October. It's such an easy choice for me. And I want to tell you that if you're confused about how to eat, that is also by design. There's a million, they want to say, we've just discovered this new way of eating that's unlocked this or that. Like, it's not true. It's a gimmick. It's a marketing strategy, and it works. And we all do it, just like I did. I did all of those different diets thinking, oh, I just need this, or I just need that, or I need to eat like our ancestors, or I need to eat according to my blood type. I forgot I did the blood type diet too. It's a gimmick. Now, it's not a gimmick to say that certain ways of eating are going to help you be less hungry, but it still is about your caloric intake. And so it is hard to weigh and measure your food, but once again, choose your hard. It's a lot harder to fight a really, really aggressive cancer, especially colon cancer is linked to these things, but all sorts of cancers are. It's much harder to just be in pain all the time, even while you're laying in bed, as I was. So choose your hard. So Optavia helped me to get started. And if you need to do that program, that's great, because like I said, it did really help me. But Bright Line Eating has taught me sustainability, how to overcome the self-sabotage. Walking has helped me to mentally stay healthy, to increase the endorphins in my brain, get me in the right headspace. But strength training has really given me resilience and helped me get rid of so much body pain. And then when cancer came, the choices helped me to be stronger, to have my recovery quicker, and maybe even to make my cancer milder. So those choices that I made years ago really, really given me the strength that I needed today. So I want you to know that. I want you to know that all of us will struggle with our health. An aging body, once you start to age, your cells just start to do weird stuff. But you do have so much power in the choices that you make. You're going to have to be a radical. You're going to have to be a radical. And you're going to have to remember, this is radical. This is not how humans have eaten for the entire history of the world, and we're suddenly eating this way and we can't handle it. Like literally suddenly, like last 20 years, really last 5 years, it just keeps ramping up and up and up until now it's like crazy. So you're gonna feel like a radical, especially if a lot of your celebratory and friendship patterns are involving these sorts of foods. But it's not as bad as you think. I still make dinner for my family. I don't have to make 2 dinners, and I can talk about that in another video. I still go to events that have food at them. I just know how to handle it now. And like I said, it doesn't take willpower. So yes, it's gonna be a little bit hard and you're going to feel radical, but you can also know that you're gonna be radically different in your health outcomes than most of the population will be. And just start looking around. You're gonna realize we're not doing so hot. We're really struggling with our health. We're really struggling with our weight. You can make choices to step outside of that system, feel better physically, feel better mentally, and have way, way better outcomes when you do struggle with your health. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for the little pushes and little nudges in certain directions and things that my sister did and other things that people said to me, the person who recommended this book to me. And I can't prove it. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but I am certain that it was those choices that got me to where I am today. And I want to encourage some of you, if you're looking and you're struggling and you feel like I'm ready, then this is how I think you can do it. And now I know you can, because like I said, I gain weight easily. I love food, and I really, really struggled for so many years. It's not as hard as you think it is. It is a little, but it's much easier than the hard that you're stuck in now. Until next time, guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye.